Hello, and welcome to Getting Started with Action Research. In Part 1, we will briefly define action research and introduce the action research cycle. Now, what is action research? The goal of action research is a positive change in everyday practice in one's own classroom or school. It is largely about encouraging education professionals to be continuous learners and proactive change agents in their own classrooms and schools. Action research is a methodology for incorporating formal structured reflection into everyday practice, and the willingness to critically examine one's professional practice in order to improve or enhance it, so that practitioners become empowered to make informed decisions about what to change and what not to change. Every education professional, to some degree, has probably displayed characteristics of a researcher. When you were experimenting with a new instructional strategy to help a struggling student, you were doing informal research. When you were reflecting on student learning outcomes, or how you might approach a topic or unit differently next time, you were thinking like a researcher. Action research is just more formalized and is a systematic approach to reflective practice. Action research is a cyclical process. This cycle consists of 3 stages: reflect, act, and evaluate. The cycle begins with reflection. As practitioners reflect, they consider their current professional practice challenges and identify a focus for their action research. There are 6 steps action researchers use to reflect deeply and strategically. Step 1. Understand existing conditions. Understanding existing conditions includes a review of learners' growth and achievement data, as well as an analysis of practitioners' reflective writing. The use of data is needed to ensure that the focus of the action research is an improvement that is both authentic and urgently needed. Step 2. Define the problem of practice. A problem of practice is a statement identifying something the learners you work with need you to do to make them more successful. Step 3. Develop your knowledge of the issue. To develop their knowledge of the issue, practitioners learn about relevant education theories, models, and strategies by reading about them in the published academic literature and professional publications, and from collaboration with colleagues. Step 4. Analyze the problem of practice. To analyze the problem of practice, we recommend the use of a logical framework. This involves developing a problem tree, restating the problem tree as an objective tree, and using the objective tree to formulate a research question. Step 5. Write a research question. The research question describes the intervention or strategy you will use, the learners you will work with, and the desired learner outcomes that the intervention or strategy will affect. Step 6. Develop a theory of action and timeline. The theory of action describes the sequence of actions you will take and the learner outcomes you will evaluate during and after the implementation of the planned actions. The second stage of the action research cycle is act. There are 5 steps that action researchers use to implement the theory of action and collect evidence of learner outcomes. Step 1. Collect baseline data. This includes the use of standardized assessments, teacher-created assessments, observation inventories, and surveys to collect data about cognitive and non-cognitive readiness. Step 2. Take action. This step involves the implementation of the planned intervention and the documentation of and reflection on the way the intervention is actually delivered. This reflects the nature of teaching as a craft and not a formula. Step 3. Collect formative data. Formative data is intended to provide the learners with the feedback they need to understand their progress, and the data that the practitioners need to understand how to modify instruction for individual success. Step 4. Review and revise the action plan and take action. Modifying and refining theories of action are informed by teacher reflections and formative learner data. Modifications and refinements are documented and evaluated in the final stage. Step 5. Collect post-intervention summative data. Like Step 1, Step 5 includes the use of standardized assessments, teacher-created assessments, observation inventories, and surveys to collect data about growth or achievement. Finally, in the evaluation stage, the researcher processes the data and communicates the outcomes. There are 4 steps in the evaluation stage. Step 1. Analyze the data. This step involves qualitative and quantitative data processing and organizing the data based on the learner outcomes and the measures identified in the theory of action. Step 2. Interpret the data. This step involves the identification of patterns in the data. It also identifies any questions about the validity or reliability of the data that emerge during the research process. Step 3. Share data and conclusions. Action research reporting can be formal or informal, depending on how you would like to share your findings with others. Step 4. Plan future action. This step can be viewed as the final part of the action research process or the stimulus for the next cycle of action research. As a final part of this brief introduction, it is important to note some of the ways that action research is different from traditional education research. In traditional research, the researcher is an outside observer. In action research, the researcher is also a participant in the research. Traditional research is often conducted with a random or paired sample of students and also involves the use of a control group. In action research, the population that is studied is the individuals in the practitioner's context, typically the students in their class. Finally, the goal of traditional research is to draw conclusions that are generalizable to a larger population. Traditional research produces generalizable knowledge. Practitioners engaging in action research are using their research results to inform changes or improvements in their own practice. They are producing practical knowledge. As you participate in today's discussions, please begin thinking about what your students need you to do to make them better learners. In the next session, we'll talk more about articulating a problem of practice.